Hello and welcome to this training video for National Geographic Learning's 6th level adult series, Life. In this video, we'll have a brief look at the key features of the series before doing an in-depth unit walkthrough, including ideas on how to exploit the material, before finishing with a look at how Life supports teachers, no matter how experienced they are. I'd like to start with this question. What do teachers want from a course? Have a think about that question for a moment or two. Of course, there are many things that teachers want from an English language course. First and foremost, I would suggest that teachers want course materials that motivate learners. They want content that is interesting, relevant, meaningful, and global. Connected to this is that teachers often want a good mix of skills and systems in any given lesson to provide variety and keep students focused. Equally, teachers want a course that has a clear methodology and one that is quick and easy to prepare. They don't want to be spending hours planning lessons. They're busy enough already. By the same token, teachers want to be supported by a teacher's book that has clear goals, clearly laid out plans, and extra teaching ideas and suggestions. And for sure, they want lots of extra materials to support that learning. Additional grammar worksheets, communicative activities, and good digital offerings. Teachers also want their students to enjoy coming to class. And finally, teachers want to see student progress and to have the tools at their disposal to be able to monitor that progress. In other words, a thorough way to test students, both formatively and summatively. This might not be a complete list, but certainly these are things that teachers look for from a new course. So, the good news is, as we will see as we go through this training video, that Life offers all of these things. National Geographic Learning's Life series is driven by rich National Geographic content and the fundamental values of inspiring people to care about the planet, celebrating human achievement and exploring diversity. The aim is to bring the world to the classroom and the classroom to life, but also to enable learners to make connections to that world. Featuring articles, photographs and videos from around the world, Life offers a truly unique English language learning experience. Covering familiar National Geographic topics like people, places and culture, the environment, animals, history, science and technology, Life offers plenty of cross-curricular content to make learning English more than just learning the language. Indeed, with Life, it's just as much about learning about the world in which they live as it is learning the lingua franca of that world. All of this content-rich material is brought together in a design that is unique in an ELT context, while matched by a thorough language syllabus. The practical, competency-based syllabus helps learners in their development of grammar, vocabulary, functions, pronunciation, and skills through appropriate communicative tasks, all through great National Geographic content. Let's now look at the structure of a unit briefly, before looking at each lesson in more detail. Each unit follows a thematic approach, and there are 6 main lessons in each unit, plus a unit opener and a review lesson. Lessons A and B are the grammar input lessons, but they are more than just grammar lessons. The grammar is contextualized in reading and listening tasks. There is vocabulary input, and there are plenty of opportunities for writing and especially speaking practice. Indeed, communication is at the heart of the course, with every lesson offering plenty of opportunities for personalization of the topic and the target language. Lesson C is the main reading lesson, while Lesson D is the real-life lesson, featuring functional and situational language. Lesson E is the writing lesson, and Lesson F is the National Geographic video lesson. Every unit then finishes with a review lesson. I would point out that while this is the structure, there is no reason that you can't play around with it and do the lessons in a different order as befits your teaching situation and your students. For example, you might want to split lessons A and B by doing the reading or real-life lesson between them. There is that flexibility should you wish for it. Okay, let's move on to a more detailed look at each lesson now, exploring how we can exploit the material and integrate the large amounts of supplementary material into the main course. The unit opener introduces students to the theme of the unit as well as showcasing what they will be learning about in the features column. Notice how the focus is on the content here and not the language. This is to arouse student curiosity and to get them excited about learning. At the bottom of the page, there is the My Life panel, which highlights the goals and functional skills that students will be acquiring throughout the unit and showing them how they will be able to personalize the content. The lesson itself focuses around the impactful image at the top of the page, with accompanying speaking, listening, and vocabulary tasks. Indeed, the use of photography is a key feature throughout Life. The photos are not just there to make the book look pretty. They are central to the lessons and are there to support learning and to develop visual and critical literacy skills. For example, with the photo from this unit opener, we get students to discuss the photo on different levels, moving from lower order thinking skills in questions 1 and 2 to more critical, higher order thinking skills in questions 3 and 4. While these kinds of questions aren't explicit with every photograph in the course, there are many different questions we can use to get students communicating. After all, they are the visual generation, living their lives through Instagram, Snapchat, and Facebook. So it's something with which they have a degree of familiarity. To assist with this, we have the concept of the 3 dimensions of viewing, which really lends itself to National Geographic photographs. The idea with the 3 dimensions of viewing is to get students interacting with images on different levels. In the first instance, we have the affective or perceptual viewing, which is essentially the image and the student. For example, how does the image make you feel? Why does it make you feel that way? What does it remind you of? Next, we have the compositional or structural viewing, which is the image and itself. Here, we can ask students to analyse the photo more. What's in the foreground and background? How is it framed? What do you think lies beyond the frame? The third dimension of viewing, and arguably the most important and best for communication, is the critical or ideological viewing, where we encourage the students to think more deeply about the image. For example, what is the message of the image? Why was it created? Who is its intended audience? In this case, the story is that the photographer Ira Block took a picture of a swamp in North Carolina and took it to Baffin Island in the Arctic, where an Inuit Eskimo held the photograph. Block wanted to show that the Arctic had looked like the swamp millions of years ago. And if humans don't control the Earth's climate in the future, it will return that way. These are simple yet very effective ways to use images in life. Let's now have a look at Lesson A. While both Lessons A and B are essentially grammar lessons, they are actually much more than that. There is also reading, listening, speaking, writing, and vocabulary activities, making for a very much integrated skills and systems approach. The grammar and vocabulary is always contextualized. In Lesson A, through a reading, and in Lesson B, through a listening. In each unit, there is also a word focus section, which focuses on the importance of collocations and different uses of particular words. In this lesson, we can see the focus is on the word long. As we'll see with the grammar, all of the activities are learner-focused, asking them to use prior knowledge to discover rules and patterns, before giving them the opportunity to personalize the language. A good activity to introduce the word focus, and one which activates students' prior knowledge, is the collocation iceberg game. In this activity, you give each pair or group of students a blank piece of paper and ask them to draw the waterline and an iceberg. Remember, there is more of the iceberg under the water than above. Give the students the word you're going to focus on and ask them to write it on the waterline. Now tell them to think of as many expressions or collocations they know using that word. For example, take a photo. They should write these words above the waterline. This is what they already know or can remember. After 1 minute, stop them and ask them to pass their iceberg to the next group. They then study the new iceberg before the teacher gives them 1 more minute to write more words on the paper, but this time under the waterline. Repeat this process until each pair or group has their original iceberg back. By this stage of the activity, there should be more words under the water than above, with each group adding more. So, maybe it will look something like this. This is a good activity as it's entirely student-focused, involves all students, and also allows opportunities for peer teaching. But why is teaching collocations so important in English language teaching? Well, as Morgan Lewis points out in Teaching Collocation, collocations allow learners to process and produce language at a much faster rate. They are assumed to make up % of everything we say, hear, read or write in real life. But what percentage do you think is missing? Take a moment to have a guess. The answer is 70%, which is huge and reason enough to make collocations a central feature of any language course. To highlight this fact, and a great way to raise students' awareness of collocations, an activity that you can do at the end of a reading lesson is a collocation hunt. This is done after all the comprehension and discussion activities. Ask your students to reread the text a final time and to highlight as many collocations as they can find. For example, take a look at this text and take a minute to highlight all the collocations you can find. As you can see, they are literally everywhere. Of course, the first time you ask your students to do this, they will struggle. But the more you do it with them, the better they will become, and the better their language use will become too. Indeed, there are many benefits to learning lexical chunks. It revitalizes existing vocabulary by giving it new and expanded meaning. It awakens student awareness of how words work together. It teaches language patterns of native speakers and helps spoken fluency. And it also aids reading fluency and listening. Let's now look in more detail at how Life teaches grammar. Life uses a guided discovery approach to grammar acquisition. This approach actively engages students in their own learning and is motivational for them. A grammar point is introduced through examples, which are then followed by guiding questions, enabling students to work out rules and patterns for themselves. There are a number of benefits to this approach. Firstly, there are cognitive benefits. It encourages analytic learning. It exploits their cognitive skills. It improves critical thinking. It involves students in problem-solving tasks. Learners participate actively, and it makes learning more memorable. Indeed, if we look at the learning pyramid, we can see that this approach, which utilizes discussion groups, practice by doing, and peer teaching, significantly improves retention rates. Secondly, there are also social benefits. This approach increases student participation and fosters collaboration. It empowers the learner, enhances their autonomy, and is motivating for learners who enjoy the hands-on approach. Therefore, the benefits of a guided discovery approach to grammar are clear. And as Fraser points out, when students own their learning and feel responsible for it, we tap into the most powerful reservoir of potential. Only then they tend to be fully engaged, motivated, and willing to learn. And research by Jeffries has also shown that independent learners are more motivated, more confident, and more likely to become lifelong learners who enjoy their studies. So not only does this approach improve learner confidence, but it also sets them up for life. However, for those students who are more concrete learners or intolerant of ambiguity, this approach might be less suitable. That's why in the back of the book there is a detailed grammar summary which those students can refer to. Alongside this, there are further controlled practice activities to go with the ones in the unit pages. If your students do require further practice to what is in the student's book, additional grammar practice worksheets are available to download from the Life website. These worksheets have been specially selected from practical grammar to match the grammar of each unit. They can be used for extra control practice for students in class, for fast finishers, or as self-study at home. There are also further worksheets available to download from the website. These extra practice worksheets come in 3 forms. The revision worksheets focus on the grammar from the unit. The extra practice worksheets focus on vocabulary, while the extension worksheets are more project-based and encourage students to take what they have learnt and apply it to broader areas. The emphasis here is on production, both written and spoken. The final thing to mention in regards to Lesson A is that they always end with a communicative task which enables students to use the target language from the lesson in a meaningful, relevant way, connecting it to their lives. To supplement and facilitate greater opportunities for spoken production, there are also additional photocopyable communicative activities in the back of the teacher's book, complete with instructions. Lesson B follows a very similar structure to Lesson A, only the grammar is contextualized through a listening task, not a reading. Otherwise, it follows the same pattern. That leads us on to Lesson C, which is the reading lesson. The texts in Life are authentic and are taken from National Geographic sources, though they have been adopted to the level of the book to ensure that they are on level in regards to vocabulary load. The reading lessons feature before, during and after reading activities, and in many ways are more than just reading lessons. Before reading tasks encourage students to speculate about the text using images and titles, ensuring that students' schemata and existing knowledge is activated to help with the reading process and to create motivation for reading. Indeed, research suggests that using images at a pre-reading stage can increase students' understanding of a text. In this case, we might get our students to focus on the image and ask them to analyse and speculate about what they can see, thus making a connection between the student and the text. As a rule, the reading lessons help students develop important reading skills, such as predicting content, skimming and scanning. Life also incorporates an array of different question types, which often reflect typical exam-style questions. For example, multiple choice, short answers, true-false, and summary completion questions all appear throughout the course. The reading lesson also incorporates vocabulary teaching, usually in the form of getting students to infer meaning from context. Contextual vocabulary acquisition is the active, deliberate acquisition of a meaning for a word in a text by reasoning from textual clues and prior knowledge, including language knowledge and hypotheses developed from prior encounters with the word, but without external sources of help, such as dictionaries or people. Why do we teach vocabulary this way? Because it's an important skill for students to have for a number of reasons. By seeing a word in context, it gives students more than just meaning. It gives them a sense of how a word is used, both its collocations and colligation. Being able to infer meaning from context also saves time when reading. Once mastered, it allows students to not spend ages fretting about the meaning of a word. Furthermore, working out meaning for themselves makes it more memorable and therefore more likely to be added to their own vocabulary. It also makes them more autonomous learners. Another vocabulary feature of life that appears throughout each unit and not exclusively in the reading lesson, is the word building section. This focuses on the important skill of word building and explores features such as prefixes and suffixes, phrasal verbs, collocations, compound adjectives, nouns to adjectives, and so on. There are several reasons why this is an important area to focus on. Firstly, research suggests that 60% of words in textbooks have recognizable word parts, thus helping comprehension. It also helps infer meaning of new words and makes learning new words easier. It enables students to identify parts of speech, and it can help develop students' vocabulary quicker. Of course, it's also a useful skill for international English exams. It's worth noting that while there are some practice activities in the student's book, there are further activities available in the workbook. A fun activity to help develop students' knowledge and awareness of word building, specifically prefixes and suffixes, is Word Volcano. For this activity, put students into pairs or groups and then write a root word on the board. For example, help. Students must then think of as many different forms of the word in 1 minute. Remind them to think of adjectives, adverbs, verb forms, negatives, noun forms, and so on. Take a moment. How many can you think of? Okay, that's enough time. How many did you get? All of these? Help is a bit unusual as there are so many forms, but most words will have several different forms, making it a great activity to deal with word building. One of the key features of the reading lessons, and of life in general, is the inclusion of a critical thinking syllabus. Critical thinking is the ability to develop and use an analytical and evaluative approach to learning, and it's regarded as a key 21st century skill. Life integrates and develops a learner's critical thinking implicitly throughout the course, though critical thinking activities are made explicit in the reading lessons. Having understood the text at a basic level, the critical thinking section requires students to read the text again more deeply to find out what the author is trying to achieve and to analyze the writing approach. For example, in this lesson, students have to determine the difference between what is factual and what is speculation. Activities such as these work particularly well with the C lesson because the texts used in these lessons are authentic. These authentic texts tend to retain the author's voice or perspective, so students can work to understand the real argument behind the text. Naturally, these kinds of reading skills are invaluable for students who are learning English for academic purposes, or who would like to take examinations such as IELTS. In addition, life in the 21st century requires people to develop the ability to assess the validity of a text and the information they receive. So this critical thinking strand in life is important for all students. Other critical thinking skills practiced include identifying key information, identifying sources and their validity, reading between the lines, identifying arguments, identifying author's opinion and viewpoint, identifying aims and purpose, thinking of counter-arguments, and summarizing texts. Let's now do an example and see how good you are at determining fact from opinion, something which students can find quite tricky, given that if it's in print, they often think that it must be fact. Take a look at these sentences taken from the article. Do the sentences A give facts, B give the author's opinion, or C report other people's opinions? I'll give you a moment to have a think about it. Okay, number 1 is a fact. Number 2 is author's opinion. Number 3 is fact. Number 4 is other people's opinion. Number 5 is other people's opinion. And number 6 is the author's opinion. Hopefully, as experienced teachers and critical thinkers, you all got 6 out of 6. Something else to point out in regards to the reading lessons is that all the readings in the books come with an audio recording. These can be useful to help students with their reading fluency, as well as being a good model for pronunciation. It's worth noting that students have access to all of the audio from the course on the Life website, in the Student Zone, and on the app. Another supplementary material that is available to teachers on the Life website are Word documents of all of the texts in the book. These come with a teacher's handbook of ideas on how to use them in class. For example, for creating jigsaw reading activities or your own gap fill tasks. For instance, you could create a preposition gap fill task like this one, or a vocabulary-based one to review vocabulary taught in that lesson. You could also use it to help students develop their error correction skills, or even to help them practice their punctuation. This kind of task, while challenging, is very useful to do, as punctuation lessons are not something we teach that often, especially at higher levels. To help them, you could tell them how many full stops and commas are missing. That brings us on to Lesson D, the real life lesson. This lesson is essentially a listening and speaking lesson focusing on situational and functional language, though there is of course language input too. It's also where the course's main pronunciation syllabus is evident, with a focus specifically on use of intonation, linking, strong and weak forms, word and sentence stress, and elision. At lower levels, the focus is more on things like shopping, giving directions, and ordering a meal, while at higher levels, it deals with things like telling stories, debating, reporting, or reacting to surprising news, as in this lesson. Context is always provided through listening tasks, which then highlight the target language for the lesson. In this case, expressions and set phrases for expressing surprise. The pronunciation focus is then linked to the target language. So here we can see it is dealing with intonation for sounding surprised, along with associated practice activities. The lesson finishes with an opportunity for free practice, enabling students to personalize the language. However, We know that many students find it quite challenging to create dialogues. So there are some supplementary worksheets to help with this. On the website, you can download the communicative activity worksheets. These comprise of a cartoon story, along with a student worksheet and additional teacher's notes. With a visual cue, it is easier for students to create. In this case, they are telling the story of a surprising day, with the students responding to the story using the target language. The final thing to mention on this lesson is that, like with the reading text, all of the audio scripts are available in Word format on the website, allowing teachers to create their own activities using the content. There are also teachers' notes with suggested ideas on how these can be exploited. That then brings us on to Lesson E, the writing lesson. The writing lesson follows a product writing approach, whereby students are presented with a model text which they study for form and content before completing a personalized task. Each lesson focuses on a specific text type, which varies depending on the level. At lower levels, students are asked to write things like descriptions, postcards, short emails, and biographies, while at higher levels, opinion and discursive essays, articles, reports, and emails are all covered. An important feature to note here is that the lessons also cover different writing sub-skills, including things like formal and informal language, organizing ideas, using notes, editing, and revising. In this lesson, we can see that the focus is on structuring a news story and using ly adverbs. Each writing lesson also ends with a peer or self-correction task, and in the process helps develop students' autonomy. There are also additional writing lessons available. On the website, there are business writing lessons for levels intermediate and above, as well as additional English for academic purposes writing lessons. These focus primarily on IELTS writing tasks, but also Cambridge First and advanced exams. The final lesson in each unit is the one that all students are waiting for, the video lesson. Videos are another great way to bring the world to the classroom and the classroom to life, introducing students to the people, places, and cultures of the world. For example, in the intermediate level, there are videos from India, Japan, Peru, Canada, the USA, and Morocco. Some of the videos are more traditional National Geographic videos, while some have been chosen from the National Geographic Short Film Showcase, which is a forum for up-and-coming filmmakers from around the world. The video lessons follow a before, while, and after you watch methodology, with a mix of activity types, ensuring students are engaged throughout the lesson. The before you watch activities enable students to activate their existing schemata as well as pre-teaching key vocabulary. Of course, sometimes this isn't enough to facilitate the viewing process, and there are a number of activities that can be done to help make the videos more accessible and interactive. Let's look at 3 of these. One activity, and one which is especially good in mixed ability classes, is to play the video without sound on the first viewing. This watch and observe task enables students to focus on what they are viewing without the distraction of having to understand a commentary, and allows them to create their own understanding. A similar task is a video dictogloss, whereby students watch the video without any sound, but as they do so, they create their own dialogue for the characters. A final suggestion is a what happens next activity, whereby the teacher pauses the video every now and then and asks students to guess what will happen next based on the context. This can then lead on to the while you watch activities, which focus on comprehension and listening for specific information. The after you watch activities fall into two categories. The first task is a vocabulary and context listening task, whereby students are played a clip from the video and they have to guess the meaning of a word or expression from a list of 3. The second after you watch task is always a communicative group or pair work activity, where the students get to discuss and personalize the topic of the video. In some cases, as in this case, there is a mini project. So here students have to devise their own micro-adventure. This kind of task gives great scope for different language skills, as well as collaboration, communication, and creativity in the classroom. As with the reading text and listening, the video scripts are also available with teaching suggestions. Each unit ends with a review and memory booster lesson to review and recycle the grammar and vocabulary from the unit. Depending on your teaching context and how much time you have with your students, these can be set as homework or done in class. Either way, it gives the teacher a great opportunity to do some formative assessment with their students, allowing them to see where the students are at and what they still need help with. Throughout these lessons, there are a variety of memory booster activities which are based on several methodologically proven learning principles, including relatability, peer teaching, repetition, and variation. These lessons also give students the opportunity to self-assess through the CEFR-linked can-do statements. When using these, instead of getting students to just tick them, encourage them to put a number from 1 to 5 in the box, whereby 5 means they're confident with the target language and 1 means they're still not comfortable with it. This acts as a further means of formative assessment, though of course it's important to encourage the students to be honest in their grading. That now brings us to the end of the walkthrough for the student's book. But of course, the teacher is equally important when using a course, so let's now take a look at how the Life series supports teachers. First of all, we have the Life Teacher's Book. As well as all the features you'd expect from any teacher's book, step-by-step instructions, answers and audio scripts, the Life Teacher's Book also has additional features. There are a number of model example answers for open-ended questions, which can help support teachers if they are unfamiliar with the subject being focused on. Background information is also provided for the photographs and the text, where there is a cultural reference. Where necessary, there are additional vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation notes. And there are also plenty of suggestions for extra bonus activities, usually 1 or 2 for every lesson, which are useful for giving to stronger students when you have mixed ability classes. This is all part of the more focused teacher development syllabus that runs through Life's Teacher's Book, and which covers a wide range of areas offering support for both new and experienced teachers. These notes offer suggestions about best practice in teaching methodology, or they may suggest neat techniques that give the teaching a new twist and ensure that learning is more memorable, more involved, and more thorough. They also cover issues such as sensitive handling of topics. At the back of the teacher's book, there is also a bank of supplementary communicative activities. The emphasis here is on giving students the opportunity to use the target language in a fun, communicative fashion. So there are lots of group, pair, and classwork activities. There are 3 of these activities for every unit and cover lessons A and B, as well as either C or D. So, for example, we can see a range of activities for this unit along with the teacher's notes. Also, in the back of the teacher's book, and available on the website in editable Word format, are the unit tests. These tests cover all systems and skills: vocabulary, grammar, reading, listening, writing, and speaking. And, as you can see, the question types are largely based on the corresponding Cambridge exam suites for that level. So, we have multiple choice closes and word building questions for vocabulary, open closes, keyword transformations for grammar, gap text, multiple choice, true or false, multiple matching tasks for reading, sentence and note completion, multiple choice and multiple matching listening tasks, emails, biographies, reports, stories, articles for writing, and a mix of pair work and individual tasks for speaking. To give a clearer idea of the exam questions covered at each level, have a look at this table. And that brings us onto the Life microsite, which is a great resource for teachers and where a lot of the supplementary material we've seen so far can be found. This is the address that you need and which will be your best friend. Under Teacher Resources, you can find all of the audio and video for the student's book and workbook, CEFR correlations, the Word documents and teacher's notes for the audio scripts, video scripts, and reading texts. Then there are all of the communicative worksheets, the extra practice activities, grammar practice worksheets, and word lists, which are available in monolingual or bilingual format, including Polish, Spanish, Catalan, Italian, Dutch, French, German, and Greek. There are also additional ready-made reading lessons, answer keys, web research projects for every unit, the exam view software to download, the unit and end of book tests in editable Word format, as well as the English for academic purpose worksheets. Let's look at these briefly, as they are another fantastic additional resource for the Life series. The Life EAP worksheets are in fact standalone lessons that can be taught alongside the main course book should you wish to have more of an academic focus to your course. They are available for intermediate to advanced and mainly reference IELTS, but also TOEFL, TOEIC, Cambridge First and advanced exams. They have been designed to be used in the classroom and aim to introduce students to some of the key task types and sub-skills they will need in an academic context, as well as to practice a range of 21st century skills. There are 2 lessons for each unit, so 24 additional lessons per level, with 6 lessons for each skill. Listening and speaking worksheets go with the odd units, while reading and writing lessons accompany the even units. Each lesson has enough material for approximately 50 to 60 minutes of class time, though of course it depends on how you exploit the material. It is also worth noting that as well as being available as printable PDFs, there are interactive versions of the lessons as part of the classroom presentation tool, with embedded audio and interactive activities. Here is the table of contents for the upper intermediate level, and you can see the range of topics, skills and language focus, as well as 21st century skills that are covered in the lessons. Let's take a brief look at some of the lessons that are available. Here is a reading lesson, focusing on predicting and practicing a matching heading task. This writing lesson covers writing an argument-led opinion essay, while focusing on the necessary structure and linkers needed for this type of task. The listening lesson focuses on matching speakers with their opinions, but there is also vocabulary input and speaking practice. Finally, the speaking lesson deals with discussing the issue of pollution and the spoken skill of agreeing and disagreeing. As you can see, these are very in-depth lessons and a great additional resource for teachers. Let's head back to the website briefly, as there is one more feature to point out, and that is the student's web app. The web app has been designed for self-study for the students and has all of the audio and video from the student's book and workbook, as well as extra grammar, language games and reading practice activities, as well as word lists. Each grammar lesson has a number of different practice activities, including typing answers and multiple choice type questions. The language games focus on the vocabulary from the unit and require the student to guess the correct word. The word lists offer further learning support with detailed definitions and examples. The interactive reading lessons provide further reading practice and come with comprehension questions and the accompanying audio, so they can listen while they read. While the content is designed for self-study and to boost learner autonomy, it can also be used as additional in-class content for students who finish the book activities faster than the rest of the class, thus aiding differentiation within the mixed ability class. The final component of life which supports the teacher and an inclusive classroom experience is the classroom presentation tool. This is a fully interactive version of both the student's book and workbook, plus the English for academic purpose lessons, with interactive versions of activities, highlighted in yellow, and embedded audio and video. There is also exclusive content on the classroom presentation tool, as highlighted by the star icons on the page. Interactive activities vary, but include multiple choice, short answers, drag and drop, and matching tasks. At the bottom is the toolbar, which includes zoom, pen, highlighter, shade tools, amongst others. It is also possible to switch to the corresponding workbook pages, as well as access the word list and grammar reference for the lesson. There are also additional games at the end of each unit, including a memory matching game, a unit quiz covering vocabulary, grammar, life content, and lucky dip questions. The final game available is tic-tac-toe. For more information and detail about the classroom presentation tool, a video walkthrough is available on the website under the Try It Out menu. That brings us to the end of this Life 2nd edition introduction video. We hope that you have found it useful. For further information, please visit the website at eltngl.com/life. And for further training, please visit the National Geographic Learning blog at eltngl.com/infocus. Or if you wish to attend future webinars, please visit eltngl.com/webinars.